Alright, the fun task of taking off the wheels to retorque my rear wheel bearings. I got them a little tight last time, so you can see the outer wheel is rolled off. They have what looks like a standard style lug nut for most any vehicle, but of course bigger. These are actually what's called bud nuts, and the stud, the outer nut attaches to, is actually the inner nut. So they have these big square drives, and they make a special socket for that because these things are torqued to about 500 foot-pounds of torque. I have a, this is the socket for them, right there. I have a 78-to-1 torque multiplier. This guy here works really quite well. All you do, so I can do this one-handed, all you do is stick this guy on the stud, and you can either rest it on the next stud over, or you can rest it on the center hub. You just don't want to rest it on the threads, or you'll trash them. And then the little crank handle goes on the end here, and it really easily cranks them out. Yeah, got to remember which direction to put it, so it'll rest on that one below, since I'm going to the left. The lug nuts on this are normal thread here on the passenger side, and they are left-hand thread on the driver's side, so you got to turn them the wrong direction over there. But over here, you just turn it like normal. You can see just easily with one hand. It's not fast, but you can see it in there just twisting around. And once you get it broke loose with just a few rotations, then it has this little extension bar, and you can put the crank right on the end, and that lets you just quickly spin them out. Of course, because last time I had these off, I was smart enough to use anti-seize on all the threads. They should come off with no trouble, even by hand, once they're popped loose. So you can see there's a normal wheel stud, lug stud, and then the bud nut is a stud and a nut, and then the outer nut goes on that. So pretty ingenious system from back in the day. And of course, anti-seize goes everywhere. It's the herpes of the automotive world. Okay, got the inner and outer wheels all off. This is all left over from before I replaced the wheel seal on this side, which I did last time I had the wheels off when I torqued the bearings. The brake pads, or brake shoes rather, were just barely damp on the side. I cleaned them really well with some gasoline and got them nice and dry, and they work really well considering when I drove this bus home 400 plus miles the day I bought it, only this axle or this corner was breaking. The others had a bad chamber, an air hose completely leaked so bad it wouldn't engage, and one on the driver's left that was completely out of adjustment and wasn't actually breaking. So brakes really well, but I never really cleaned up the outside of this drum. But now I've got to pull the axle out, which I did last time, banging on this with a sledgehammer once all the nuts were out, because these have little cones, split tapered cones that seat into the flange and basically lock it in. And you got to kind of bust those free. But I realized there were 3 threaded holes in the flange, and so this time I picked up some half 13 rather bolts and pushed the flange out so it is actually loose on there, and that's enough to knock out the cones. And now I've just got to pull them out with some pliers and a flathead and work my way around and get all those, and then this is ready to come out. And I can rinse and repeat on the other side so that I'm able to air it up and unlock the parking brake. These DD3 style have to have air to unlock the rollers. They're not like spring brakes, which, you know, would require air anyway. But you can't cage these like you can those. All the brake hoses and the back chambers are new. The front hoses are new, and you can see in there the quick release relay valve and its accompanying hoses are all new. I did all that early on after buying the bus. So I got the outer wheel on the driver's side off, and I thought I'd show you these are indeed left-hand thread. So left tightens, advances, and right loosens. And you can see the studs have a little L in the center. I hope that shows up on video. I don't see, other than that nut being a little mangled, I don't see any markings on the nut that indicate. I've got two that are brand new, because these two studs on this side were stripped from somebody at a tire shop over torquing the son of a guns. And these do indeed have a little L on the nut as well. So now I just got to get the inners off and pull this axle, and I can air it up and release the brake and torque my bearings. Well, turns out when I took this one all apart, it was actually leaking again. Not around the seal, which I just replaced last time I had this apart, but around the seal saver that's pushed, or the wiper that's pushed up on the axle tube itself. I've already got it mostly back together, but you may be able to see it's kind of wet in there. Let's see if we can get some light. It's kind of damp in there, but it's not like dripping wet. That's some paint that's wet. And the wiper was all the way back on the axle tube, but there's a groove where it fits tight in around the tube itself. There's a groove on the inside below the edge of the wiper. I should have filmed it before I put it back together. But what I did was cleaned that out really well and put a layer of ultra gray RTV inside that groove between the wiper and the tube. It's behind where the bearing sits, and the seal runs on the outside of the wiper, so it shouldn't in any way interfere, and it doesn't seem to. It spins nice and free without any trouble. So I am gonna let that set up obviously before I take it anywhere, but I've got a lot of other stuff to do. I've got to deal with that mess on the front of the differential. You can see how wet it is. The pinion seal's leaking, and looks to be leaking around where the differential goes into the pumpkin or the axle housing. So I have a little more fun ahead of me, but I think I have fixed where this was dripping. I wasn't getting on the pads yet, so I think it's all good there. And we'll see. If I've got to replace that wiper, I can use a puller and pop it off and heat the new one up and push it on. Luke can still get all that at US Coach. So one little bit down and a whole bunch more to go.